Cheeks, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. Josephine couldn't help but blush. How often had she hoped that Matthew would turn his infinitely deep brown eyes on her in the way he was doing so right now, in this moment. For at least 2 years, she had watched him work, interact, move from afar, taking real honor in simply having the opportunity to watch this graceful, beautiful man at work. Now here he was aiming that glare directly at her. She could not believe her luck. Josephine was working to breathe, much less bring forth words or remember precisely how she stumbled into this fantasy moment in the first place. As the butterflies created chaos in her stomach, and the bees were at their frenzied buzzing in her head, Matthew reached out and touched her hand, causing all to momentarily pause in a flash of searing light that took Josephine back to 5 nights earlier, as she recalled how she came to this paradisical instant in time. She was always the last one out of class because she was, admittedly, both slow and a bit of a nerd. She loved soaking in every last bit of a lecture, even once the lecture was over. Josephine would take a few calming moments for the class to file out and for her to literally breathe in the classroom, allowing her to begin to mentally file away all of the information that she had just been given. She would then slowly gather her things from her desktop to her bag, and she would sashay out as best she could through those slim rows. 5 nights ago, she did everything as is her wont. The soaking in, the breathing in, the sashaying out. However, as she exited the classroom, good old IY-17, she tripped over an errant shoelace, stumbled and bumbled out of the door, and, though she saved herself some scuffed knees and a bruised swath of flesh or two, she did drop her zip-up pencil bag and all of her beloved little utensils scattered sporadically across the small hallway floor. To her surprise, Matthew was still there in the hallway. He seemed ill at ease, but he was quick to ask how she was doing, lean down, and help her by shepherding all of her wayward writing implements back into their canvas home. After doing so, he asked if she was all right again. She blubbered and stumbled, but eventually got out some sort of indicator that meant, in her mind anyway, that she was okay. Josephine tacked on a thank you for good measure too, though it seemed a rushed afterthought. Matthew did not move on down the hall to his next obligation. He kept staring at her with the weight that she so often felt when his eyes had, by happenstance, met hers during a presentation here or a lecture there. He just wasn't breaking this fixed stare. Josephine's heart began to pound harder and harder to the point that a roar of blood flow was going through her ears. So, when Matthew breached the silence and spoke, she almost could not hear him. He said things about unrequited love, about looking and learning and loving from a distance, about expectations and how they couldn't really be together, but how he just had to say something or he would go insane, about how he knew he wasn't all that much of a catch, but not engaging her was no longer an option. About how if people would just tell others what they mean and explain that, even if for a moment, if they could be together or exchange some verisimilitudinous physical or verbal affection, they could open up entire universes and really, truly live. It was all garbled to Josephine. All she knew was this human being that she respected so much that she had had wild, hopeless dreams of engaging in this manner had, at some point, taken her hands and was pleading with her to go beyond looking into much more exciting waters. The white light faded, and she came back to this moment, the one that she'd been waiting for a very, very long time. Awkwardly, Matthew leaned forward and kissed the corner of her mouth. Not quite her cheek. He was clearly nervous too, and missed her sweeter, more by-the-book area for a peck. Her cheeks flushed a crimson inferno, turning the deepest of reds. Even if this were for the moment, and in the moment alone, she would embrace the now as she never had before, and be a goddess, if only for the next few hours. Thank you for listening to Cheeks, a short story by me, Jared I. McGee. The backing track for this story was taken from freesound.org, an amazing community of artists that set out to help one another through the sharing of their art. Summon Hue provided the track, which is being used under a CC 0 1.0 Universal Public Domain dedication license. A sincere thank you to Summon Hue and freesound.org for the contribution. The track that you are listening to now is titled Neither Here Mix 1, and is by Massive Lad. I'm going to allow this track to play out its course to the end. You can find more from Massive Lad at his SoundCloud page, soundcloud.com/massive-lad. Massive Lad happens to be my younger brother, and has given me permission to use this track. However, these tracks are indeed copywritten materials and should be treated accordingly. Thanks so much for the tunes, little brother. The stories are better for them. Next up from Prose, we have The Vodka Talks.